Hi, everyone. My name is James Bickerton from Advanced Scout, where we truly believe that if a business idea, product idea, or even a feature for a product has not been tested with real customers, then you may well be setting yourself up for failure. And what we like to do in this podcast is really go into methodologies and tools which can help you set yourself up for success and help yourselves reach success by using these tools to test your ideas with real customers. And I'm really excited today to have an old friend with us, Charlotte Ledger, who works in PA consulting. We met and worked in the UK, and now Charlotte's working out of the wonderful New York. And Charlotte's a big proponent and expert of jobs to be done. Charlotte uses it in her role regularly, from what I understand. And also they use it in PA consulting, but a fair bit. So we're going to just dig in today around innovation and also jobs to be done and how that helps innovation. And I think that's really enough from me. Let's kind of intro Charlotte here. And Charlotte, if we can just hear a bit about background about you, about how you are doing what you do now, and also how you got into this kind of innovation area as well. That'd be really great to hear.
Yeah, sure. So I think this kind of fascination with innovation starts really early in my life, like way back when I was choosing my A levels, when
Wow.
I chose business, design, art, and ethics. So I think without knowing it, I was already interested in all of those topics back when I was 16 years old. From there, I then went to Leeds University. I studied graphic design and communication and learned all about the tools I needed to kind of create. It was quite an advertising focused course, so it was really focused on communication and storytelling. And from there, I then went into digital, and that's, as you said, where we met. So working at a really small agency when I started out my career, I think I was super lucky. I got to wear lots of different hats, learn so many different design methods, from branding to doing video. But then that's where I really started to fall in love with digital, and kind of from there moved to a digital agency that was called We Are Friday at the time, and they really focused on digital transformation and building digital products. So that was the first time I got to sit next to engineers and build things with them, and kind of really start to understand the intersection between technology and design. And then fast forward kind of a few more years, and now I'm at PA Consulting, and now really understanding more of the business side of products and technology. And so I think over the kind of last 10 years of my life, I've sort of picked up the skills from all the different aspects to get to this point where I can really understand or I can understand enough about all of the different aspects required to make a great product. That's kind of where I am today, and doing a lot of innovation strategy and experience strategy, and kind of helping my clients understand or figure out or make decisions around what they should do next.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. That's super interesting that it was around the time of A levels you mentioned, I think, where you kind of made those choices around not only design but also business and also ethics as
Yeah,
well. I think that's a
yeah,
really important mix in terms of, if we look at something like design thinking, which is always, I guess, championing having three different disciplines together in terms of technology, in terms of business, and in terms of design. And what I see a lot of these days is that designers can design a beautiful interface, a beautiful product as such, but they sometimes struggle selling the business benefits of it. And it sounded
mm,
to me like you actually learned that quite early on, in terms of what's the kind of hard business outcome? How are we going to actually pull in revenue from the business? What's our bottom line? And understanding a lot of those kind of that business talk at the real beginning sounds to have set you up for success. And when we met each other, you were, well, it was a it was an agency that was more around marketing really than product. It was kind of going into product, but it was around more marketing. And it feels like you've kind of, I could be wrong in saying this, but looking at business and design around A levels, then going into advertising and marketing, and then going more into kind of product, and going more into actually building stuff that people want, for want of a better word. And yeah, I just thought that was
at least.
well, you're trying to at least. Yeah, exactly. If we can, we'll probably come back to some of that as we talk. But if we can just kind of have a look at the current state of innovation right now, and we can talk about jobs to be done, but we're going to get into that to a second. But kind of, where do you, what is the current state of innovation right now? Right, so it's a word that I even found a few years ago when I was working at a certain company, large financial institution. And I remember asking the innovation team, the lead of the innovation team, what innovation meant, and also the client as well. And they both had a real hard time explaining what the word innovation meant. So I'm kind of like wondering, from your perspective, what is innovation, and what's the kind of current trends you're seeing in innovation at the moment? What's the kind of big picture? What are the most exciting things that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the first question, I think to me, innovation is like anything that's in some way new. That could be just a small feature that you're adding to a current product. It's like some sort of improvement, some sort of way that we are seeing a problem and solving it in a new way that people haven't done before. I think the word innovation also kind of goes with things like words like disruptive, and I'm seeing now a lot of kind of people referring to the disruptors as challenger brands. It's almost every 2 or 3 years we get a rebrand of what innovation means, or what's the kind of new buzzword around it. But I think to me, it's something that's kind of disrupting a market, that's kind of challenging the status quo, or doing something in a new way. And I think it's hard to have a conversation about innovation without mentioning AI. Obviously, that to me is the most exciting thing that's happening at the moment. So, I know you just posted about Apple's big announcement. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I think that it's really exciting just to see how it's evolving. And I've kind of been watching for the last couple of years to see the types of people as well that are starting to adopt AI functionality. And so, I'm really excited to see now it's being integrated into Apple tools that we use every day. It's going to become so commonplace that we kind of forget what life was like before AI. And that's terrifying also. But I think that's kind of definitely the biggest topic right now.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And it's the way that I always frame innovation is that it's an improvement upon an existing idea. So the last thing that we saw, what do I mean by that? So the last, it's the coach and horses, or a horse going from a car. It's the wired telephone going to not the feature phone, but to the feature phone actually is innovation. Okay, going from your normal wired telephone to a mobile phone to a featured phone, and then coming with something like the iPhone, which came back out in 2007, right? And that was seen as a real revolution, as something like the word you said, disruptive as well. And I think you're right in saying the thing that's most disruptive at the moment is AI, and people trying to get their heads around exactly what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my business? And how can we utilize it? And the thing that I really liked from Apple was, well, one, just the way that they've marketed it and branded it, AI, Apple Intelligence. Now they seem to own the term AI for a short period of time, for a week or two, until someone else does something cleverer. And also how they just really consider humans and the customer and exactly what they can do from it. Because we've seen from AI We've seen Microsoft quite recently put millions. I think it's actually might even be billions now they're putting into OpenAI, but a huge amount to develop out Copilot. And we also see ChatGPT and Claude and these things, but these interfaces aren't extremely user friendly, and they're not particularly in terms of okay, it might look like a chatbot and it's easy to type in, but I'm not always going to get the expected result from what I type in, and I don't know exactly what the thing to type in. The term is called prompt engineering, as I'm sure you know, but which is something I think will die out in the next 12 months anyway, in terms of the AIs will just get good enough to understand what your intent is and then be able to give you what you want. And I think Apple even showed that in their presentation, the fact that they can understand that you're talking to your mother, or the mother's talking to the daughter, I think they showed. And they can understand that when you ask, oh, what time will they get there? They know that you're talking about your mother, and they also know that your mother's on a flight, and they also know the flight details and the itinerary from your past messaging with them. So just from that simple few words, they can then extract so much and also deliver quite a lot of value. And I feel that they're making the interface a lot easier to use in terms of making AI useful, I guess, for want of a better word. So I think that's a really great example of current trend AI. In terms of kind of other ones that I see, I guess NVIDIA is another one, but again, that is creating lots of GPUs, which again they be used by AI to make that computing power. So we come back to AI again, and I guess in terms of like challenges. So what are the main challenges that businesses face right now when they're trying to innovate in today's market? We've talked about AI a lot. We can continue talking about that, but maybe there's some other stuff as well.
Yeah, I think there's loads of challenges with innovating, especially if you're working like in a big corporation where things take a long time and decisions take a long time to make. There's often a lot of risk aversion. People are too worried about making the wrong choice, placing the wrong bets. Maybe they've been burnt in the past, or there's cultural challenges that kind of don't create that environment for creativity to kind of foster within that environment. I think that a lot of and we're sort of at this point now where lots of people have taken risks, and they have had to take risks because someone has come along in their industry and shown them that there's another way to do this and the people like it. Let's take Monzo, for example. I remember when Monzo came out, and I had on that wait list, I got Monzo as soon as I possibly could. And the impact that they have had on the financial industry is incredible. Like, if we look back at that now, like, I could barely do anything on my HSBC app at the time. I think I had to have that little plastic thing you put in the key, and it was just so annoying and frustrating, and it was really difficult to do things. And then Monzo came along, and we're like, you know what? We don't have to make it this hard. We can make it easy. And I think that, made a lot of the retail banks kind of have to catch up, because they realized that that's what the people wanted, and there was a way to do it. So sometimes, innovation is forced by some sort of disruption, and other times people are kind of, or the culture is more able to sort of take those risks because it's a small company, or the team is kind of set up in the right way. But I think also the market right now, companies generally are trying to buckle down and stick to what they do best, and kind of weather the storm of inflation and everything that's going on in the markets. It can be really challenging to actually, keep pushing forward and being bold and brave when the market is telling you to stop and just to kind of do what you do best and hold on and weather that storm.
And what kind of trends have you seen, or behavior have you seen, in terms of kind of getting over those things? I think that the thing you've just touched upon now, in terms of the market right now and inflation and people playing it safe, it seems to have a few people now have moved from making those riskier big bets into more of optimizing the actual experiences they do have. And optimization usually comes through as a theme when there's financial hardships or that we are seeing now in the world, as opposed to really, okay, we're going to take a huge risk and put $7 billion into AI. And how do you see
Yeah.
those like teams, those big corporations de-risk in terms of and still being able to innovate?
Well, I think the ones that are really good at it do things like, like test and learn, and they're out in the market, they're talking to customers, making sure that they actually understand what people want rather
Yeah.
than just kind of the surface level. So really getting to that root cause of a particular problem and listening. I think I've seen a lot of noise, especially on LinkedIn and things about people saying, customer research isn't working. And I think when I see things like that, I just think you're asking the wrong questions, and maybe you don't have the
Yeah.
right toolkits to ask the right questions. And that kind of, does bring us on to the jobs to be done framework. I think, yeah, as you said at the very beginning, like the customer insight at the beginning of any sort of the project, whether it's optimization or whether it's thinking about like a new revenue stream or something new that needs to be done within a market, that insight along what can the company actually feasibly achieve, and what is viable within the market and the market conditions right now. Like those three pieces are gonna help kind of de-risk some of that innovation nervousness.
Exactly. So there's that balance there between what the business needs and what the customer needs. And in that design thinking
Yeah.
approach as well, we see what's feasible from a engineering perspective, technology perspective, what's desirable from a design perspective. So what's that customer asking? And also what is viable from a business perspective. What is financially viable
Yeah.
in terms of, how much money can we put into this? And also what's the return going to be? Can we actually bankroll this and get a decent return out of it? Or
Yeah.
whatever
And
or it
does
might
it
be
make sense for
reputation as
us
well.
as a
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
as a
exactly. And does
brand,
it make sense for us as a company?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we've talked about a couple of good examples of that already, talking about AI. But I think, another good example of innovation and what's going on your timeline from PA Consulting and Diageo in terms of like making a
Okay,
paper
yeah.
bottle for Bailey's, which I found really interesting in fact that it wasn't technology, it wasn't digital for once. It was actually something tangible. And can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like where has that come from?
Yeah, so there's a whole initiative at PA called Pull Pack, and it started with trying to find a material that could replace like pill packaging. So like when you go
Yeah,
get ibuprofen and you're popping it out of the plastic thing. So
yeah,
trying to develop a new material to replace that. And as
yeah.
part of
I'm never
that,
sure. I'm
I
never
think
sure
it's a
which.
collective with
Yeah, I was going to say I'm never sure which how to put it in recycling. Is it plastic or is it metal? Because you always have that metal backing to it. But yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah,
yeah, I actually don't know. And yeah, so I think it's actually started out as a collective between a few pharma companies and medical companies and PA, and it's being rolled out, and now we've just partnered with Diageo to look at Bailey's packaging and packaging. I think the interesting thing about it is like they're using patterns, within that have been around for a long time. So like, how do we make the different bottle shapes and sizes that people are used to, and have some uniformity across brands so that it can be scalable? And then, yeah, and kind of starting to experiment with different brands and different ways of packaging up Bailey's in that instance.
and it's not glass or plastic. It's a type of paper material, is it? Or card? I think I
Yeah, I
saw.
think it's like yeah, I'm not definitely not the best person to ask about it, but it's made from sustainable materials, and I think it is like papery.
Amazing. And I guess that's come out of a research approach. It's not kind of build it and they will come approach. Let's do this on a whim. But it's actually come out of customer needs and desires.
Yeah, and I think in that case, I think it's coming out of like a wider sustainability need. You know, we know that as the world, we need to get better at not using single-use plastics, and
Yeah.
so that's really come from a wider need that's not necessarily a customer need, but more of a need of the world. So I think there is, even within innovation, and I know we talk a lot about customers, but I think sometimes customers might not know that they need to stop using single-use plastics, and it's the organization that needs to act on that and be the responsible party in that case.
Cool. All right. Excellent. So we've touched upon jobs to be done, and I think it's a good time now to maybe go into that a little bit further and talk about what it is and how it can be used. So, for those kind of lay people who have no idea what jobs to be done, JTBD, and is, could you just give us a kind of like very high level explanation of what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to self confess, I'm definitely not an expert in this, but it's a methodology that I find very fascinating and kind of like really passionate about. As soon as I learned about it, I was like, this is incredible. So I'm using it more and more in my day-to-day work. So I'll try not to butcher the description of it, but essentially it's this theory that every time we want to buy a new product or choose a new service, we are hiring that service to do a job for us. And in order to hire that job, we need to hire that service, we need to fire something else. And so it's this kind of understanding of what that progress is that customers are trying to make and the obstacles or friction that are getting in their way. So I'll try and bring this to life a little bit with
Yeah.
a milkshake as an example. So in the morning, I'm on my way to work and I want a nutritious snack that I can eat on the go. So maybe I choose to hire a protein milkshake for that job. But I could also choose to hire, I don't know, a protein bar or a cereal bar or a bacon, egg and cheese sandwich. Being in New York, so there's lots of different things that I could choose to fulfill that job for me. And like, let's take you as an example, right? You could want to hire that milkshake for a different job. Maybe you're taking your daughter out for an afternoon snack or your son out for an afternoon snack, and you think, I want to have this special moment with my child. I'm going to treat them to a milkshake. And that's a very different reason and a very
Yeah.
different need to me, who's looking for a protein snack in the morning. And so when companies can understand all of the different jobs that people are trying to hire a milkshake for, or maybe they're not even thinking about hiring the milkshake for it just yet, but it could be hired to solve their particular need, that's when you can kind of think about different ways of maybe packaging up that milkshake, or different ingredients that you could add to that milkshake to make it appeal to that particular job. Like they might decide to add protein and banana and kind of make it like slightly healthier and full of nutrition for that morning snack, or they might decide to create a kid-sized version for you to enjoy with your kids. So it's really that like understanding kind of what are the jobs out there and which ones is your product like suitable to be hired for.
That's amazing explanation, Charlotte. Thank you. That's much better than how I normally explain it. And I'm going to steal that off you, hook, line, and sinker, I think. I love this analogy of like, hiring someone, because that really brings it to life. It really brings it to life from a human perspective, and the fact that you're hiring someone to do a job, right? And you gave two beautiful
Yeah.
examples there, I think, of hiring it for more of like a health benefit in terms of like a protein shake. And then also from a different perspective, from I think it was a mother and son, or it certainly was kind of like a guardian and child kind of relationship, right? And
Yeah.
them wanting to treat that child to a milkshake, and that's a completely different job to the protein one, right? And understanding all of those jobs then really kind of builds out the opportunity, I guess almost the brief for the team to then
Mm,
move to the next stage from discovery to actually solutionizing. I mean, it really goes from discovery, I guess, to actually starting to create a problem statement, right? From what's really coming through, maybe like everyone's talking about using a milkshake as a treat as opposed to having it as a protein. So we kind of say, okay, there's a really like
Yeah.
super niche market there for protein, and maybe it's like making a protein shake taste like a treat as well. So there's kind of like different
Yeah.
ways you can kind of shift it around, and it's certainly certainly there's the ability, I think, to use that to make something called a blue ocean. Not sure if you're aware of blue ocean strategy. You probably are, knowing you. You know everything.
No, I don't. I don't
But
think I am.
so the kind of the principles of that is that you create super niche category. You create the category. You become the category maker. So then that's a blue ocean. There's no other sharks in your ocean fighting over the meat or fighting over this bloody ocean around the same type of, I guess, audience and delivering a similar type of product. So I'm going to try not to drop a brand name here, but there's a particular brand that I love that is a protein shake, but it doesn't have like a chemical taste for it, and it's because it has very healthy ingredients to it, and it feels like a treat when you do drink it. And they've done exactly, and they have their own kitchen. They kind of let you into the kitchen. They show you the organic materials that they use to create the shake, ingredients and everything. And they've really kind of like created their own category because it's for high performance athletes, which I definitely am not, but it is for high performance athletes who want something that tastes good, and that is, I guess, an example of blue ocean, and I guess a good example. Tag it on to that example of what jobs to be done is at a very high level as well. I guess.
Yeah.
What's the importance of jobs to be done in innovation?
I think that it's a great tool if you're a bit stuck. If your teams are coming up with the same old ideas over and over again, it's a new year, it's a new quarter, let's do an ideation session, and you're coming up with the same things, you can't seem to kind of like break through that. I think that it can be a really good tool to help you really understand like the different ways consumers are thinking about your product or
Yep.
service. And so that can help like open up new avenues or new opportunities or new oceans, as you say, to like solve for. And I think it also kind of helps teams make new connections or dig deeper on particular like pain points or frictions and get to that really like core emotional reason behind why they're choosing your product or a competitor's product. And so, it can just kind of open up some of that ideation and creativity in a different way that maybe you've done before. I think also it can highlight that, who you thought your competitors were might not actually, that list might not be complete because you as the milkshake company might just think milkshake company B is your competitor, when in reality, it's the Nutri-Grain bar or the cereal bar that you haven't really thought about as a competitor before. I think it's, it just helps make those different connections that maybe you weren't thinking about before.
I love that point around not realizing who the competitor actually is, and not realizing who the competitor is, but who the competitor potentially could be. And I feel that talks to something like direct and indirect competitors, and moving more into that kind of indirect area, and a new opportunity, I guess, for the business as well. Yeah. Could you give? I think you've already kind of given a real world example of it with a milkshake one. But is there another one that you could think of as well, of where jobs to be done has really been successfully applied?
Yeah, maybe I'll give you like we can talk more about like a digital solution. It's a little bit closer to what we work on. So I won't name them, but a personal finance app. So like a app where you can plug in all of your different bank accounts and you can manage your accounts in one place. That's essentially what they do. And they used the framework to really understand like what are all the jobs that a customer is doing when they are managing their finances, and they're able to understand what whether or not they were fulfilling some of those jobs and where there were gaps. So, they found that there were gaps, and it helped them really focus on those particular gaps and kind of give them the confidence that, well, we haven't explored debt, for example. We've got some light touch debt features, but we haven't really explored that. But clearly this is really a need. Like, people are using spreadsheets and they're using other tools to figure out and track all of their debt, or they're not, and they're kind of burying their heads in the sand, and so there's a need there, and the jobs to be done framework kind of was able to highlight that, and then they're able to go and start designing solutions that go and meet those needs around debt.
Okay, amazing. And another one comes to mind as well at the moment. It's a project I've been working on, which I will drop names, and I think we should drop names. Perhaps we'll get some sponsors. But one project I've been working on is called Be Powered at the moment, for BP, and
Okay.
that meets a need in South Africa in terms of they have something called load shedding, which means that you're without electricity potentially every day for 10 hours. So you don't have any electricity whatsoever for 10 hours each day because the national grid just cannot handle the demand. And we interviewed a lot of potential customers in South Africa to understand what the jobs to be done were. And we thought we knew it all, but it turns out that we knew, well, not nothing, but almost next to nothing in terms of what the potential was, in terms of that people wanted to be able to power refrigerators because they found that if the refrigerator is off for 10 hours a day, they're going to have to throw all that food away. In fact, so the job to be done was, I want to hire a refrigerator, for example, or I want to hire a power source, I guess, to power my refrigerator. And
right,
we also found things like they couldn't do their work at home as well, because they couldn't work from home, because if they didn't have a generator, then they didn't have, when the electricity went down, they didn't have Wi-Fi, they didn't have power for the laptop, they couldn't complete their work if they were, I guess, a knowledge worker who was using a PC. But equally, also, if you're a small to medium enterprise and you're running a barber's shop, your clippers just stop working because you don't have electricity. So just kind of understanding kind of what are the jobs to be done really helped us also understand all the jobs to be done before. And I really like this analogy that you've created around persons that you're hiring, really kind of understanding all the opportunities before then going into like archetypes and personas and all that stuff. It really gives you like a massive basket of opportunity at a very high level, and quite quickly as well. I think you can generate them very, very fast as well. When you start talking to an interview for like an hour with a customer, you end up generating a lot of jobs out of that. Yeah. And I think that example you've given is very true in terms of, it's very easy to, from an app and from banking and fintech, understand to have some kind of like surface level features for, I think it was loans or debt management we were talking about. But as soon as you kind of start talking to customers, you can start then generating a lot more jobs that app needs to do. And a lot more features can then come off the back of that, I guess. So we've talked about it from like a high level, and we've actually started going into a bit deeply as well. And if we could maybe just spend like another few minutes talking more like deeply, what are the kind of like, I guess what I'd like to cover is, what are the kind of key components of job to be done? What are the kind of, how does it influence product development? And then thirdly, what are the kind of like the do's and don'ts of job to be done? But like let's start kind of like, with first question, what are the kind of components of job to be done? What does it look like in terms of being able to kind of use that as a tool?
Yeah, so in its simplest terms, basically need to understand the customer's job. So what is it that they're trying to accomplish? And then once we understand that, like, we can then understand what is the desired outcome. What is it that they want to achieve? So we now understand, like, what's the job and what do they want to do the job? Like, what do they want the job to do? And then we can get into, so what are the current solutions that they're currently hiring for that job today. Are they hiring a competitor? Are they hiring a completely different product? Like for the finance example, they were using spreadsheets rather than in the milkshake example, maybe they are eating a cereal bar instead of a milkshake. So we can really understand what are the current things that people are hiring for that job today, and what are the frictions that are getting in their way. So sometimes we might unearth that they use a particular thing, but it doesn't quite do the job. And so they have to sort of bootstrap a bunch of other things onto that particular solution. And that's like gold. That is then definitely a great opportunity, because you can see that they've got a job. The thing that they're hiring for that job is not quite sufficient. So there's a great opportunity there to kind of improve that experience and give them a better solution. And then it's simple. You just design solutions that meet those needs. So easy. It's super easy.
It almost is that easy, right? It almost writes itself. And I guess that's my next question, is like, how does it influence the product development process?
I think it depends on the teams and how much they're willing to listen often, but sometimes the simplest things come out of this type of work, and it's a simple improvement, it's a simple change, it's a simple like change of navigation structure, or a new feature that's not actually that difficult to implement. And sometimes it might be something a little bit further afield, or a little bit harder, or a little bit more challenging. Maybe we need to partner with someone, or explore kind of a whole new piece of our product. I think it really depends on what the output of the research is. But in terms of like the influence, I think it's, it can be really impactful, definitely at like the beginning of some sort of ideation cycle, whether that's, a optimization cycle where you're doing a workshop every quarter to kind of come up with new ideas for the product. Maybe chuck in a couple of jobs to be done, interviews, and do it like the qualitative side of it, just to kind of input into those ideation sessions. Or maybe it's a much bigger thing where, as an organization, we're looking at new revenue streams. We need to diversify our products, so we want to figure out what we should do, and then it becomes it plays a bigger role, because you're trying to use it in a way to really understand where the white space is, what jobs there are for us to try and solve. And maybe you do a bit of a bigger lift there, where you do the qualitative interviews and follow that up with some quant to kind of really prioritize those different jobs and help you decide which jobs you should focus on.
You've answered my next question already, in terms of how do you pick how do you understand customer demand in terms of jobs to be done?
Yeah.
Is it that quant thing that you mentioned, in terms of we've got like 1,000 people have mentioned this same job to be done, as opposed to only 5 people mention this other job to be done?
Yeah, I think when it comes to demand, the quant can be helpful. I think there's also other tools out there around like segmentation and looking at the economics of the market. But in terms of jobs to be done, yes, the sort of quantifiable part of it would be to start with interviews and to find those jobs with a set of interviews, and then go in and put those jobs into a survey. Maybe do what's called a max diff analysis, which I only just learned about like 2 years ago, where basically the participants in the survey will make trade-off decisions about what they're presented with. So what you get at the end is a relative priority of those jobs. So you're not going to, if a job is not in that list, it's not going to tell you like how important that job is to something else like that's not in that list. But within that list, it's going to give you the priority of those jobs. That can be really helpful in helping you focus on maybe the top 5 and kind of starting to explore those top 5 and help you focus on what it is like that you should be kind of placing bets on.
And is that, you mentioned ideation session, It's a process that you identify those top ones and then kind of feed the ideation session with those in terms of putting some draft material up on the walls, whether they be real walls or virtual walls. Do you kind of make those decisions before that ideation session in terms of prioritization, or do you just kind of go blur, just have them all there?
Yeah, I think it can depend, but usually we'll do both the qual and the quant to identify maybe sort of 5 different spaces that we're recommending, and then within those 5 spaces, you can then start plugging in other sort of tools to help you like really understand what those spaces are. So I'll then build that into and use other tools like from design thinking, how might we questions, or you like looking just at the market and getting a bit of inspiration from kind of who's doing this, who's solving this job the best, and they might be completely different competitors or that you haven't seen before. So that together with maybe also that input from the business side, maybe there's a job that has come up pretty high, but it's just something they're not interested in doing, or they can't do, or they just don't see themselves being able to do that within the next 2 years. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a bit of a like, making sure that we're kind of taking in that business understanding as well, to make sure that that list of opportunity areas has been kind of well thought through.
Is that where that viability lens comes over there then, I guess? And perhaps also a feasibility lens from engineering as well.
Yeah, maybe like at the beginning, but it's kind of light touch. If something just left field comes out of those interviews that just doesn't feel like something that the organization is going to be able to do, then we might discard it at the very beginning. But typically, we'll do the kind of feasibility and the viability a little bit further down the funnel when we have developed like 3 or 4 solid ideas, and we've got some concepts to go and test, and that's when we can start kind of then getting into a bit more of the detail around, okay, how technically feasible is this? Like, are we going to be able to build this ourselves? Do we have something similar already? Do we need to partner with someone? And then once you've got that concept shaped a little bit better, it's a lot easier to go out and do the viability as well, and kind of some people that are far smarter than myself go do some really clever maths and figure out like the economics of it all. So I think and look at things like cost benefit and different tools that they'll have in their toolbox as well, to kind of really figure out whether there's an ROI on this particular idea.
Cool. Okay. What are the kind of challenges of bringing that into an organization in terms of jobs to be done, bringing it into into a client or into an organization?
Yeah, I think there's 2 main challenges. One is just like, the lack of understanding. And so it's an education journey, and you
Yeah.
kind of have to really help people understand why it's powerful and why it's impactful. And then the other is like a funding challenge. A lot of the time all of the time, research like this is going to require some sort of investment.
Yeah.
And so it can sometimes be difficult to sell in what that investment is. But I typically like to think about it like a risk management strategy. So, if we do this first, we're going to be able to focus on the right things that consumers really want or need. And rather than like waste money, time, resources on chasing things that we think we don't know anything about and are a bit of a gamble. So I kind of like to frame research and design often as kind of like a risk management strategy before you go and spend lots of money on building the wrong thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy way of framing it. I've also framed it similar way myself in terms of it's a way that you can de-risk a project. If you just make that
Yeah.
investment up front, then you can de-risk spending hundreds of thousands of development of a product, going down a route that actually may not be correct because you haven't validated it correctly. You don't actually have customer research yet to back it up. You don't actually know there is demand there. Okay, so
Yeah. And I think
yeah,
also I like to think about it as like the sort of 10 to 90% rule of like, if you're going to spend, let's say, 2-3 million on this thing, then you need to spend at least 10% planning and getting it right, and research can fall into that planning and getting it right.
Yeah, especially when you can sit, well, there's the opportunity cost, and I guess there's also the potential value that this product or innovation, whatever it is, can bring into the org as well. If it may cost 3 million to develop, but it may also have the chance of bringing in 200-300 million of revenue, right? So why not make that small investment, like you say, up front, and to save you from a lot of pain later down the line, and also set yourselves up for success. Where do you see jobs to be done in the future? Do you see it having I guess like a healthy future, jobs to be done, or is there any kind of like new ways that you've seen it implemented, or kind of things that may change with it in the future in order for it to keep on being a success?
I think that's a great question. I think it's definitely only just really come into my sort of ether, and so it's one of those things that's still growing, and people are still experimenting with and figuring out how it best applies to the thing that they're doing. I'm sure people will experiment with like AI playing a role in kind of gathering those insights, which I'm not sure how I feel about, but it can be useful in like helping you organize information. Like if you go out and do the customer research yourself, like you can start using tools to help you organize that information and using the framework. I think we'll just get faster and smarter at doing it. So in that respect, I think it's got a healthy future, especially as long as we keep the people that are advocates of the method keep track of how much impact it's having, and tell that story and evangelize that story. I think it will hopefully mean that organizations are investing in the right things, and we as consumers get to experience our easier lives because these companies have invested in the right things. I mean, that's the very like positive outlook of it.
Yeah,
so that's where I hope it'll
positive
go.
outlook is good. In terms of, I think I'd probably leave this as the last question for today, because I know we've only got an hour today together, and I could probably keep talking to you for 4 hours at least. But in terms of like implementing this practically, what's kind of your advice for someone who wants to try jobs to be done out? What are kind of like one tip or one kind of tool or way of doing it would you kind of advise a person who's not done jobs to be done for the first time? What would be your number one tip for implementing it? How could they implement it like in the next hour after listening to this?
But in the next hour, well, I mean, it's quite straightforward to implement. If you've only got an hour, you've got to go practice it, go find some people down in the cafe and start asking them some questions. I think there's tons of resources online around, helping you write the discussion guide, training you on like how to get to the root cause of any friction, or kind of dig deeper into some of those emotional levers. So I would just try it, and if you haven't got the resources and the funds to go and do a full research project, then bootstrap it. Like, as I say, go and try it on your friends, try it on friends of friends that are willing to give you an hour, and see where you get to. I think like broader than that, if you're really thinking about implementing it in a team, it's super powerful when it's cross-functional. I know we've kind of talked about how we need the different lenses in order to make something. I think it's really important that like the team that are working on it are coming from different parts of the business, so that they can really understand that whole picture. Like, do consumers really want it? And then as a business, can we do it, and should we do it? So, in order to answer those questions, you really do need that mix of skills: researchers, designers, business folks, technology, like coming together and kind of really seeing the value of this research. Because then if they see the value of this research, then they're going to tell their colleagues and friends about it, and that's kind of going to have that network effect.
Brilliant, and great answer. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming on today. Really enjoyed the time, and
Thank
I've
you.
learned a lot of stuff as well. Max Diff, I'd never really heard of that time. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, Google it. I've been doing some
Will
Googling
do.
recently of it. So, but yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Excellent. Okay, thanks everyone for listening to Advanced Scout, where Guesstimate is replaced by Validate. Thank you all for your time, and speak to you soon. We'll drop a bunch of the links, the things we're mentioning in the show notes today, and see you on the next one. Thank you and goodbye.